Hi, it's Dwyer, GamblersAdvisory.com. Earlier today, a fight took place, heavyweight championship fight between Dr. Iron Fist, Vitali Klitschko. I'm going to call him Vitali. And he was fighting undefeated American, Kevin Johnson. Now, the fight took place in Switzerland. By the time I saw the fight tonight, I already knew who won the fight. I'd already heard that Vitali Klitschko dominated the fight and won by a very wide points decision. Now, for full disclosure, I was actually a little bit surprised because I had predicted that this fight would end by knockout. So I was curious to see the fight. Um, I was very curious because Johnson went into the fight having knocked out his last three opponents, and Vitali Klitschko went into the fight sporting a 92% knockout ratio. So I was curious, and I was also very surprised by what I saw. Let me just say, I did think that Vitali Klitschko dominated the fight. I only gave Johnson one round. Yes, I did give Johnson a round, and that was the seventh round. What stunned me with the fight was that Johnson, against arguably the world's most offensive heavyweight, Johnson was able to voluntarily go over to the ropes. And Johnson was able to egg Klitschko on and actually defend himself quite successfully for most of the fight while actually countering with an excellent jab. Now, I believe the subscript of the fight is as follows. Just imagine, let's roll back the clock to one of boxing's biggest moments, the Rumble in the Jungle, 1974. We're there. You're Muhammad Ali, and you're fighting Big George Foreman. Like Klitschko, a big man, hence the nickname. Like Klitschko, that generation's arguably most feared knockout puncher, a guy who could certainly take you out. He had knocked out Joe Frazier. He had knocked out Kenny Norton. People forget that Norton fight in 2 rounds right before the Rumble in the Jungle. And you're Ali fighting him, and you want to make this a war of stamina. You want Foreman to punch himself out. So what do? You start talking trash to Foreman. You go over to the side of the ring. You have Foreman come to you. You cover up. You have Foreman hit you with a wealth of punches. You throw just enough counters to keep Foreman engaged and to keep him coming forward until the midway point in the fight when you start to turn it on and Foreman has nothing left in the tank. Now, what happens if it's 2009 and you've decided to rope a dope Vitali Klitschko? You've decided to employ all of those tactics, and lo and behold, you get to the 8th, ninth, 10th rounds, and it suddenly dawns on you that Vitali Klitschko, while he's 38 years old, and you thought you'd be in against a tired 38-year-old, Vitali Klitschko is actually in supreme condition, and Klitschko is prepared to go the distance. I believe that's precisely the situation that a very highly skilled Kevin Johnson found himself in. I believe Johnson gave away the early rounds. I believe Johnson then realized that Vitali Klitschko was going absolutely nowhere. And I believe Johnson in the latter part of the fight decided he was just going to go the distance. Johnson continues to talk to Klitschko. I believe Johnson privately hoped to see an opening develop, have Klitschko be tired. Klitschko was breathing out of his mouth at times. Klitschko did get banged up around the eye, but Klitschko's a supreme athlete. I'm sure he's in a gym someplace right now. Klitschko, who took the fight against Lennox Lewis years ago on something like 2 weeks notice, Klitschko was ready to go 12 rounds. This is what would have happened to Ali, in my opinion, if Foreman was as well conditioned as Vitali Klitschko. So I do not believe that Kevin Johnson entered the fight simply to go the distance. I believe Kevin Johnson entered the fight to get a heavyweight belt. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't fighting young George Foreman. He found out he was actually fighting a very professional, a very conditioned Vitali Klitschko. Now let's talk about the relevance of this fight going forward in the heavyweight division and some interesting things that took place in the fight. Um, watch early in the fight when Vitali comes forward and tries to pressure Johnson. You're going to see that Johnson is able to neutralize Vitali Klitschko's right hand. Out here in the United States, Lennox Lewis was one of the announcers for the fight, and Lewis was speculating on air that Klitschko might have something wrong with that right hand. I don't believe so. I actually believe that Johnson had great head movement. Klitschko actually tries to throw the right hand, can't hit Johnson on the chin. In fact, late in the fight, Johnson starts taunting him, pointing to his chin. Johnson's defense is so advanced that Johnson's literally able to, like Vitali Klitschko, drop his left hand. Um, Johnson's an elite talent when he has a guy with a 92% KO ratio right in front of him, and Johnson is comfortable on the ropes. Johnson's actually leaning back on the ropes. He's moving just enough so Klitschko cannot time him and take him out. Also, Johnson's defense is so elite, Johnson can actually have his right hand literally right across the front of his body, and Klitschko couldn't do much with it. Klitschko could not time shots to Johnson's temple. Johnson is a much better fighter. Let me underline the word much than Chris Arreola, who doesn't come close to this kind of defense, or Sam Peter, neither of whom is comfortable fighting backwards or comfortable on the ropes, neither of whom has the defensive skills to diffuse the explosive Vitali Klitschko's offensive skills. I was very impressed with Kevin Johnson. I understand he got dominated in this fight. I believe that Johnson, against elite heavyweights, would give them all they can handle. He just happened to be in with the best heavyweight here today. Let me also point out, too, it's not every day that I see Vitali Klitschko with a puffy eye. Johnson's jab is among the very best in the division. I would put it right up there with Vladimir Klitschko's jab. Also, Johnson's thin resume, let's talk about that. Sometimes in boxing, managers don't want to put their fighters in risky official fights. So they will have the fighter learn how to fight in the gym in sparring sessions. Don't just look, when you're assessing fighters, at the quality of their official competition. Also look at the quality of their unofficial sparring partners. Here, Johnson actually sparred in more than one location with former heavyweight champion Nikolai Valuev. Johnson, in fact, at one point flew to Germany to spar with Nikolai Valuev. My point to you is simply, and I understand Valuev had some less than complimentary things to say about Johnson. My point to you is simply Johnson, before this fight, had been in the ring with literally championship level heavyweights. Also, Johnson, if you look into his background, you'll see that Johnson actually met former champion Larry Holmes and has also sparred out of Larry Holmes's gym. Don't be fooled by Johnson's resume, which does look thin. Understand that Kevin Johnson, very highly skilled, believe your eyes, not the resume, and has actually been in the ring now with both Valuev and has been the first man to go the distance with Vitali Klitschko since Timo Hoffman several years ago. So if Johnson fights Chris Arreola, if Johnson fights Sam Peter, if Johnson fights any offensive fighter who he can counter, who has a stamina problem, Sam Peter, for example, I believe Johnson has an excellent chance in that fight. Let me also say, too, that Johnson, I thought, did the best job in neutralizing Vitali Klitschko's right hand that I have seen. I thought Johnson was excellent at rolling with the punch. At the end of the fight, Johnson is completely lucid. I thought, keep in mind, two men went 12 rounds in this fight, Vitali and Johnson. Johnson also has excellent stamina. Keep an eye on him. To sum up, Vitali dominated this fight, but keep an eye on Kevin Johnson. He's underrated. Thanks for watching.